In this lesson, we are going to learn about the slope of a line. We will be working in section 3.2 in your book on page 279. We are going to work problem numbers 2 through 18 even, 20 through 26 even, and 28 through 32 even. On 28 through 32 even, we are going to modify the instructions slightly. So the directions on objective 1 for numbers 2 through 18, it says find the slope of the line through each pair of points. In order to find the slope of a line, you're going to need to know the formula. So we always use the letter M to represent our slope, and so it's y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. Okay. So on number 2, they tell us that our graph crosses through these 2 points, 4, 9, and 3, 7. The first thing that we need to do is identify our x and y values. So I've got an x value here, a y value here. Remember, your first value is always going to be your x. Your second value is always going to be your y. Try and make this a little clearer for you guys. Just 1 second. There we go. That seems to be a little bit easier for you guys to see. There we go. So our first value is always our x, our second value is always our y. So this is an x and this is a y. So then I'm going to figure out which one has the sub 2's, as in here, and which ones have the sub 1's, which are here. Since this 4, 9 ordered pair is my first ordered pair, I'm going to label those my sub 1's. And since this ordered pair is my second ordered pair, I'm going to label those my sub 2's. So now I'm going to plug them into my formula. I recommend first putting your parentheses down. Remember, whenever you plug in numbers for values or for variables, you always are going to replace them with something with parentheses. So this first value would be y sub 2, and we see y sub 2 was 7. Our second value is y sub 1, which here shows it to be a 9. Then we have x sub 2 here. X sub 2 is 3. And then I have an x sub 1, which is 4, so that will go here. So now we're going to subtract. The rule for subtraction is keep, change, opposite, then use your adding rules. So we are adding, and our signs are different, so that means we are going to subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number over 3 minus 4. So let's say you had $3 and you spend $4. You would have -1. You can also use the keep, change, opposite rule here. Keep, change, opposite. So you would subtract the 2 and have a -1. And then to further simplify, you would say -2 divided by -1 is a +2. We have now found our first slope. So now let's look at number 4. Number 4 in the book says -3, 2, and 0, 17. So the first thing I'm going to do is label my x's and my y's, and then I'm going to label which one is which. So this is my first ordered pair, so those are my 1's. This is my second ordered pair, so these are my 2's. So I'm going to write in my parentheses. This will really help you not make mistakes with your signs. So y2 goes here, so that would be 17. And then y1 goes here, and that would be 2. x2 goes here, would be a 0. And then x1 would be the second one, which would be a -3. So 17 minus 2 would be 15. And then you've got 0 minus -3. So our subtraction rule, keep, change, opposite. So you're adding. So 0 plus 3 is 3. Then we have 15 divided by 3, which is 5. We have now found our second slope. So now we're going to do number 6. On number 6 we have -2, -5, and 1, -4. Going to label my x and y values. And then I'm going to label my sub 1 and sub 2. So this is my first ordered pair, so they are my sub 1's. This is my second ordered pair, so they are my sub 2's. So I'm going to write in my parentheses and fill in the blanks. So y2 goes here, which is -4. y1 goes here, which is a -5. x2 is a 1. x1 is a -2. So we're subtracting, so we're going to keep, change, opposite. So -4 plus 5 is 1. And then down here I'm going to keep, change, opposite. 1 plus 2 is 3. Moving on to number 8. We have -6. 1 and 2, -7. So I'm going to label my x and y values, and then this is x1 and y1, x2, y2. So I'm going to put my parentheses down. So y2 is -7, y1 is 1, x2 is 2, x1 is -6. So I'm going to keep, change, opposite. So we're adding and our signs are the same, so we're going to add these together and keep the sign. That gives us -8. and then keep, change, opposite. So that would be 2 plus 6, which is again a positive 8. So negative 8 divided by positive 8 gives us a negative 1. Now let's look at number 10. We have negative 2, 4, and 3, 1. So label your x values. This is my first ordered pair, and this is my second ordered pair. So I'm going to plug in my parentheses here. Just going to write them down. So y2 is 1, y1 is 4, x2 is 3, x1 is negative 2. So we have 1 minus 4, so we're going to keep, change, opposite. So we would subtract those since they have opposite signs and keep the sign of that larger number, divided by 3 minus negative 2. So keep, change, opposite. So 3 plus 2 is 5. Okay. Now number 12. We have negative 2, 8, and 6, 8. So I'm going to label my x and y values. This is my first ordered pair, this is my second ordered pair. So I'm going to plug in my parentheses here. y2 is 8, y1 is 8, x2 is 6, x1 is negative 2. So if I have 8 minus 8, I'll have a 0. And then 6 minus negative 2. We're going to keep, change, opposite. So 6 plus 2 is 8. Whenever you have a 0 on top, that means you're going to have 0 for your answer. That's like saying we have a pizza that's cut into 8 slices, and we have 0 of those slices. So how much pizza do we have? None. So that's how we get 0 for our answer on this problem. Now we're going to move on to number 14. On number 14 we have negative 5, negative 3, and negative 5, 2. So I'm going to, going a little bit out of order here, I'm going to go ahead and write out my parentheses. And I'm going to identify my x and y values. So this is my first ordered pair, and that's my second ordered pair. So my y2 is 2, my y1 is negative 3, my x2 is negative 5, my x1 is negative 5. So now I'm going to keep, change, opposite. So 2 plus 3 is 5. And then keep, change, opposite. -5 plus 5. So that gives us 0. Because if you owe somebody $5 and then you give them $5, you now have square. You don't owe them anything. So that's how we get a 0 down here. Whenever you have a 0 in your denominator, this is different from number 12 because now our 0 is now in the denominator, we would say it is undefined. You can never have a 0 in your denominator. We will learn a little bit more about that when we get into Math 95. So number 16 and 18 are going to be pretty good ones to do on your own. If you would like, you can go ahead and pause this video so you can try these on your own. Give you a minute to pause it. Okay, so on number 16 you had -5, 7 and 2, -2. So I'm first going to identify my x and y values and label them as my first ordered pair and my second ordered pair. Now I'm going to write in my parentheses. So my y2 was -2, my y1 was 7, my x2 is 2, my x1 is -5. So now I'm going to keep, change, opposite, which will give me -9, and then I'm going to keep, change, opposite, which gives me a +7. Let's move on to the last problem in this section, or in this little objective here. Number 18, I have -3, -5, and 2, -2. So my x and y values, and then this is my first ordered pair, this is my second ordered pair. So I'm now going to plug them in to my parentheses. So y2 is -2, y1 is -5, x2 is 2, x1 is -3. So I'm now going to keep, change, opposite. So -2 plus 5 is 3. And then keep, change, opposite. 2 plus 3 is 5. So whenever you have two ordered pairs and they are asking for your slope, you can always use that formula that we had in the beginning, which is m equals, remember m stands for slope, y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. One way you can remember which variable goes where is that in your numerator you have your y values that go up and down, and your x values go left to right. Remember, your slope is always rise over run. So your rise variables would go up top and your run variables would go in the bottom. Now we are going to look at problems number 20 through 26 in your book. The directions say, this is objective 2, the directions say, find the slope and y-intercept of the line represented by each equation. Well, if we want to find the slope and y-intercept, we need to remember the formula of y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. So we need to make sure our problem is in that slope-intercept form. That's what this is called. Okay, so we need to make sure it's in that slope-intercept form first, and then our value that has the x in it, whatever's in front of your x is your slope, and then your number by itself called a constant is your y-intercept. So let's look at number 20. On number 20, we have y equals negative 7x plus 3. So your slope is always the number in front of the x, and your y-intercept is always the number that is by itself. So we would write over to the side m equals negative 7 and b equals 3. You will also see that your book will write your y-intercept as 0, 3. If you were to plot 0, 3 on a coordinate plane, you will notice that that still is your y-intercept. Anytime you have a 0 for your x value, that means it's going to lie on that y-axis. So to look at number 22, we have y equals 5x minus 2. Remember, the number with the x is your m, the number with you that is by itself is your b. Now this one is a little bit tricky. Your m is really always going to be that number in front, so it's a 5. That's not any change. But your b, you've got to be careful because it is a 2, but you have a negative sign in front, so that actually makes it a negative 2. Be careful because the numbers 2 and negative 2 are completely different. Okay, and remember, if you were looking at answers that may be in the book, they would have been written as 0, negative 2. So we will now move on to number 24. Number 24 says I have y equals negative 5x. Well, we know that the number in front of the x is our m. Now we need to find out what our b is because there's nothing written there. Well, we can't just add numbers to this. So what we can do is we can say, okay, what number could I add that wouldn't change anything? So I would ask the question, what number could you add to your bank account to not change the value in it? Your answer would probably, hopefully, be 0. So if we were to add 0 to this, we would not be changing the problem at all. So our y-intercept would be 0. So we would write it as m equals negative 5 and b equals 0. To write it as the book writes it, you would write 0, 0. So that means that you're actually going to have your graph cross over at the origin. Okay, so let's look at the last problem in this objective. So this is number 26. I have y equals negative 3 over 5x minus 2. So negative 3 over 5 is my m, negative 2 would be my b. So we would write this as m equals negative 3 over 5, b equals negative 2. Remember, your m does not include the x. A lot of people are tempted to write negative 3 over 5x, but that is not correct. Your m is only the number that is in front of the x value. So to write this in our book form, it would be 0, negative 2. So that's it for objective 2. Now let's move on to the next part of objective 2, where they ask us on numbers 28 through 32. They say write each equation in function form, give the slope and y-intercept of each function. You are going to learn about functions in Math 95. We do not necessarily need to cover them in Math 94, so we are going to skip that part of the directions. So what we are actually going to do is we are only going to give the slope and y-intercept of each function, okay, or of each equation. So on number 28, we have 5x plus 2y equals 10. So remember, in order to figure out the slope and y-intercept, we have to have it in the form y equals mx plus b. So what we need to do is get the y by itself and have the x value first and then the number by itself second. So I always teach y'all to draw a line through that equal sign so you know which side is which. So the first thing we need to do to get rid of everything except for the y on this left side is to subtract 5x. So 5x minus 5x means these are going to cancel because that gives us 0. I'm going to bring down my 2y, and then I want to write my negative 5x first. I can't combine them because they're not like terms. Remember, like terms have to have an x value in both of them or neither one of them having an x value. So we want to put the negative 5x first because that's the first thing next to the equal sign. And then I'm going to bring down that 10. And since it's a positive 10, I'm going to write plus 10. And then I have 2y. I don't care what 2y is. I want to know what just plain y is. So I'm going to do the opposite that's being done to y, which is divide by 2. And what I do to one term, I must do to every term. So these 2's are going to cancel because 2 divided by 2 is 1, and it's understood that if it's not written, you have a 1 in front of that variable. So I now have y equals negative 5 over 2x plus 5. So this value would be my m, this value would be my b. So to write it, we would say m equals negative 5 over 2, b equals 5, or 0, 5. Number 30 says I have 2x minus 3y equals 6. So I'm going to again put my line through the equal sign, and remember the problem is that we do not have it in the form y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to subtract 2x first. So 2x minus 2x is going to cancel. I'm going to be left with a negative 3y over here. And then I'm going to have my negative 2x next to the equal sign because that's what it says in my formula. and then I'm going to bring down my plus 6. So I have negative 3y over here. Our goal is to get that y by itself. So I'm going to divide by negative 3 on each term. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 cancels because it just gives us a 1. So we have y equals negative 2 divided by negative 3. Well, we know that's going to give us a positive, but 2 over 3 does not simplify. So we're left with 2 over 3x, and then positive 6 divided by a negative 3 is a negative 2. So this value is your m, this value is your b. So m equals 2/3, b equals negative 2, or 0, negative 2, whichever way you would like to write it. Now to the final problem of this lesson is number 32. So on this problem, we have x equals negative 3. So in this problem, there's not necessarily anything to work. However, we need to know that whenever we have x equals a number, your slope is always undefined. And you're never going to have a y-intercept. So we would write none. The graph of this equation would look like a vertical line, and it would go through the point negative 3 on the x-axis. We'll talk more about that, or we talked more about that in section 3.1 notes. And if you look at number 29, just to have another example, on number 29 we had y equals 9. So on here, my slope is 0 because it would be a horizontal line through y equals 9. So where 9 is on the y-axis, anytime you have y equals a number, your slope is going to be 0. And your y-intercept will always be what y equals, so 9. And we could always write that as 0, 9. I hope this lesson has helped you. Please be sure to ask any questions in class if you have them. Good luck.